Okay guys, so in this video I am going to issue a trigger warning. This one could upset a few. We are going to be talking about gender identity. So if you don't think that you can handle a difference of opinion in this, then I would advise tuning out of this video now. If you would like to hear a different opinion, then by all means hang around. Like, comment, share, whatever you want to do. I promise I will not beat you up. But we are going to get started now. The gender identity, why that is in the news right now is because the Equality Act was passed through the House of Representatives today. Now, what is the Equality Act? Well, the Equality Act is basically an amendment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Then this summer, the Supreme Court ruled that the LGBTQ community are covered under the protections of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's fine. I'm okay with all of that stuff. I think Civil Rights Act is important. More Republicans voted for it than Democrats, by the way. And it's, you know, it is a needed, necessary thing to have around. But the issue with the Equality Act for conservatives, and myself included, is that it provides those same protections for gender identity. I do not believe in that, and this is why. So whenever I am looking at these types of policies, and I'll use gay marriage as an example. Gay marriage, I was fully supportive of. I have no problem whatsoever with gay people getting married. If you want to be in this party of misery, then by all means, come on down. No, I'm just kidding. I'm happily married. I love my wife, but that was just a joke. But the reality is this. Two men or two women getting married does not harm me or anyone else. There's no injured party in that. And that's how I apply these types of things. I care if somebody is adversely affected by it. Now you might say, well, you know, Peter, how are you adversely affected by the Equality Act? Well, I'll tell you. The problem with the Equality Act is it covers gender identity, which means that biological boys can compete in athletics or for scholarships or in the workforce with biological females. That is not a, no victim type policy. For every boy that competes in women's sports, that's one less female that gets that position. For every male that takes a scholarship for a woman's sport, that's one less female that gets that scholarship. An educational scholarship, a job where they're hired as a female instead of a male. That's one less position given to a female. So for me, this isn't a situation where there is no injured party. Females are having civil rights used against them, and for me, that's not okay. And that's not even mentioning the other aspect with sports where you're letting biological males who are bigger, faster, and stronger than females, usually taller, usually weigh more, and are usually far more aggressive, compete against females in what could end up being a very dangerous outcome. Especially when you look at stuff like where we've seen men in like MMA type stuff fighting against females, and the outcome it's bad, it's brutal, to the point where you really have to be concerned about the health and well-being of these females that are being punched by men. We do not allow that in normal society. Why would we allow it in an octagon where they can just say, well, I identify as a female? That doesn't make it right for a man who's built like a man to beat on a female. It just is not right. So there isn't a situation with this where there's no injured party. It does cause problems. Now, on top of that, my biggest fear is the same thing that I've said to people in the past. I've lost friends and family for the comment I'm about to say. And I'm going to say it again because I don't have remorse for this comment, because a lot of times what I'm saying gets misconstrued. What I always say is this. With gay marriage, I had no problem with it. My only issue with gay marriage is that the line in the sand? That was my only question, always. And what I would then follow that up with when people would ask, well, what do you mean? Is I would tell them, well, is this where we stop? Is this the area that we're happy with? Or are we going to eventually keep moving that line until we get to the point of grown men having sexual relations with underage females? And people would get upset about that because they would think that I am equating homosexuality with being a child sexual predator. That wasn't what I've ever been saying. What I've always said, and I've always clarified, is that there's many steps between gay marriage and, the point of, adults having sexual relations with children. But if you just keep moving the line, eventually it gets closer and closer, and that gap closes to the point where you're right at that doorstep. Now, people could say that's an overreaction. Is it really, though? Because in California this last summer, they tried to pass a law, and they may have. I don't even know. I didn't keep up with it enough. I don't think they did. I hope they didn't. But they tried to pass a law where if an adult were to have sexual relations with a child 15 or over, then they would not be put on the sex offenders registry. So by their standards, we're already there, folks. Now, is there anything that would say that it'll never go below 15? No. Once it gets to 15, then it'll go down to 13. Then it'll go down to 11. And it'll just be, as long as they've hit puberty, it's okay. It's not okay. But when we keep moving lines like this, we end up in these situations. And again, this is a perfect example. As we went from gay marriage, I thought that's where we were comfortable at, that we didn't need to go a whole lot further than that. But now we've decided to push the line again. Now we need to start covering gender identity. At what point are we going to start saying maybe we should acknowledge and deal with the problem in this society? Why do we have so many young kids that want to have a different gender identity? This is not normal. We are at astronomical numbers of kids that view themselves as LGBTQ or view themselves as, have gender dysphoria, anything. It's insane, the numbers we have. And instead of dealing with it and actually having these things looked into and researched, we keep encouraging it. We need to stop encouraging this stuff. We need to head this off and ask ourselves, what the hell is going on in our society where our kids are not okay with being their biological selves? That's not okay. The party that is pushing this is supposedly the party of science. That's what you guys tell us all the time. You tell us, believe the science. Believe the science. Do you believe the science? Because you sure as hell don't seem like it. Boys are not girls. Girls are not boys. There's an issue if they think they are. It needs to be handled because biologically, by the science, a boy's a boy and a girl's a girl. The same as in an abortion, a child, the minute it starts developing, is a human being. Have you noticed how liberals do this? How they steer science to fit agendas? I mean, look at it. The perfect example is abortion. If a liberal wants a child, then the minute the doctor says they're pregnant, that's a human being at that moment. But if they don't want that child, if it was a mistake and they want an abortion, all of a sudden that's not a child. That is a group of cells. That is not believing in the science. That's believing in convenient science. That's not something that anybody should be practicing. Same with this. Gender dysphoria is a very real thing. And we used to call it what it was. And now we've decided that we're going to just make excuses for it and encourage it. This is not what we should be doing. I'm not saying we should be insulting these kids or taking away their rights or anything like that. But at some point, folks, this line is going to keep moving and you're going to regret it. Think of it this way. Rachel Dolezal, I've mentioned her in the past. She was the white lady who thought she was a black lady. Her parents were white. She started identifying as black, went to a black college, ended up heading the NAACP out west. Okay, Rachel Dolezal, when she got caught, when she got called out for her parents being white, the interviewer asked her, Miss Dolezal, do you consider yourself a white woman or a black woman? And she said, I identify as a black woman. Okay, why did we have a problem with that? Because we sure as hell did. She's still unemployed to this day. She can't find a job. Now, in that situation, we decided, no, you can't identify as a black woman when you're a white woman. Well, why the hell not? Why can a woman who actually lived the life of a black woman for a significant amount of time? She was, all black people thought she was black. All white people thought she was black. NAACP thought she was black. Black college thought she was black. She raised black kids. She was, by all intents and purposes, she was a black woman. At least in lifestyle. But then when we found out that she had two white parents, all of a sudden, whoa, you can't identify as black as a white person. Okay, well, I do agree with that. I really do. But how is that any different than a boy identifying as a girl? I would actually say it's a little more messed up that the boy thinks he's a girl. I mean, at least Rachel Dolezal had, I mean, really it's just a skin color. She was able to live a black person's life for a period of time because, again, everyone thought she was black. So she got treated like she was a black person. A boy is not going to get treated like a girl because they're not a girl. They don't have any of the biological attributes of a female and vice versa. So she actually has more claim, in my opinion. So, but in that situation, all of a sudden we don't view them the same. We view her as a bad person. We view a boy who wants to be a girl as if that's a normal way to be. Like what are we doing here, folks? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So what I'm basically saying is, at some point, does that line move to where white people can identify as black people? Do we get to a point where white people can identify as Native American? No. If they want to be able to get like stuff like affirmative action, or they want to be able to get special treatment on like land purchases or home purchases, or school grants, all that type of stuff. Like if I were just to say, look, I feel like I am a Native American, I really understand their culture, and I feel like I am one of them, are we going to be okay with that person identifying there and then providing them with all of the benefits? Or no? Or are we gonna put in special rules there? Because I think we're gonna put in special rules. Because here's why. Liberals, and I'm talking directly to you right now. I'm talking to you because it's your politicians that do this, and you don't realize it. Your politicians take advantage of people when they're at their weakest. That's what they're doing right now. They took advantage of everybody right now over a pandemic. They basically did a bunch of beta tests, found out how far they can push you, and then basically strip you of all of your rights. Then when they get to this point, they throw in little stuff like this, like gender identity things, and just basically tell you not to pay attention. Look away. Now, this has been happening forever, and you guys just don't wake up. I'm telling you to wake up. I've been telling you for months to wake the hell up. Why I say that is, you guys, your politicians have done this forever. They did this with black people. They gaslighted them back in the 60s to think that they were the party of black people. No, they weren't. Republicans were the ones that were the party of black people. They're the ones that voted for civil rights, not the Democrats. Women's rights were by the Republicans, not the Democrats. Slaves were only owned by Democrats, 0 Republicans. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. You guys have been gaslighting people forever. And once you got past with black people and you got it to where they were voting for you at 90% plus, then you moved on to women. And then it's all of a sudden, let's convince them all that Republicans and conservatives are trying to take away your right to choose, your body, your choice. No, not at all. Saying that you don't want to have abortions does not mean that you're anti-female. It means that you're pro-life. You want to have those beautiful kids that should be born, to live the same life you got to live. That's not a terrible thing. But once that they got done with women, so they had black people, they had the women, then all of a sudden they moved on to Hispanic people, and they left the other two behind. They did nothing for either of you. Now, all of a sudden, Hispanic people are a big thing. We're going to open up the borders, blah, blah, blah. Make sure we get the Hispanic vote. Obama said all of that. My wife's Hispanic, and she would even tell you he didn't do anything that he said he was going to do. He just screwed them over to get their vote. Then came the gay people, LGBTQ. Those all became the top priority. And, once that they got these votes in this last election, now it's all of a sudden, okay, now let's go into the gender identity people. And it just keeps going and going and going. It's all about votes. It has nothing to do with thinking about you. Gender identity ends up becoming giving rights to underage individuals to change their sexual orientation, to have sex changes and do all of that stuff before they are ready to make those decisions. Don't believe me? Then look up the policies of Joe Biden's Secretary of Health and Human Services, the trans woman. Transgender woman. She would not even answer that kind of question today. She was asked by Rand Paul. She got asked twice. She would not answer the question because she supports you giving underage kids gender reassignment surgery. It's not a good thing. Once that it's done, it can't be reversed. So again, I know this was a very, very long video. This is a very, very important subject. I am 100% against the Equality Act because it harms other people, it harms females especially, and it only will lead to worse and worse situations where our children will be able to decide without our consent to change their sexual orientation, and they will not be able to go back on it once that they do it. Look up all the statistics, depression rates, suicides, all of that stuff is astronomically high for people who do those types of surgeries. Again, you are going to get to a point where that is going to happen. You're going to get to a point where it's okay for white people to identify as black people, or black people to identify as Native Americans, or Native Americans to, I don't even think they'd want to identify as anybody else. The reality is the line has to stop. There has to be a hard stop. We don't ever do it, and every time the liberals get in control, they keep pushing it further and further to the point where there's not going to be a line anymore. We're all just going to be screwed and wonder how the fuck did we get here?